Hello and welcome back. So, congratulations on completing the core AZ-305 domain. From this point onward, we are moving beyond the simple passing the certification exam. So, we are now entering the world of enterprise Azure architecture. And this is where the solution architect spend most of the time. So, today we will learn how the Microsoft recommend the designing Azure environments for the organizations that have hundreds of the subscriptions, thousands of the virtual machines, and multiple business units and also global operations, strict governance, and regulatory compliance. So, this guidance comes primarily from the Microsoft Cloud Adoptions Framework, Enterprise Scale Landing Zones, and Azure Well Architecture Framework. Okay, so these are the widely used real world Azure implementations. Okay, so why these topics matter? So imagine today we are going to imagine you are joined a Fortune 500 company and the CIO asked, we are migrating 400 servers to the Azure across the 12 countries. Design our Azure platform. So would you simply create one subscriptions? The answer is no. Would you create the hundreds of these subscriptions manually? That is also no. Would you start creating the virtual machine immediately? Again, no. So an Azure architect always start by the designing the Azure platform, not by the applications. Okay, that platform is called the Azure Landing Zone. So what are the today learn today learning objectives? So our today learning objectives are: we will see how to understand the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework and explain the Azure landing zones and see design enterprise scale architectures. Okay, build the management's group architectures. Okay, then we see the design subscriptions strategy. Then we see the understand platform engineering, and then we prepare for the some real Azure architectures interview. And we also think like a principal cloud architect. Okay, so now so the our first topic will be cloud adoptions framework, which is CAF, and enterprise landing zones and enterprise scale Azure architecture fundamental. So, what is the cloud adoptions framework? That is CAF. So, if we start with the definition, so the cloud or Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework (CAF) is a proven guidance designing to help the organization align their businesses, people, and technology strategies to achieve the business goals with the actionable and cloud adoptions. And what is the strategy and plan? So it's defined the business justifications and align the scalable adoptions plans. Ready to prepare the cloud environment, which is Azure landing zones for the planned changes and adopt, migrate the existing workload or innovate the new cloud innovative solutions. And what will be the governance and management? So govern the environment and manage the ongoing operations. So if I simplify, so cloud adoptions framework is Microsoft proven guidance for planning, adopting, governing, and operating the cloud environment. So think of a CFA as a, let me write here. So let me shorten this. Okay. Uh, I think we are good to. Okay. So think like this. So think of a CFA which is look like uh, start with blueprint, then it goes to enterprise Azure platforms. Okay, and then it goes to your cloud migration. Okay, then it goes to operations. Okay, so now, okay. So CFA is not a tool; it is a framework for making the architecture decisions. So why Microsoft created the CAF? So thousands of the organizations were migrating to the Azure. So many failed because they focus only on the virtual machines, networking, storage. So they ignored the governance, identity, operations, security, and subscription design. Okay, and CFA resolve these problems. So cloud operation journeys are like CFA divides the cloud adoptions into the stages. So what are the stages? So let me write here. So what is the stages of CFA? So it is start from a strategy, then it's go to strategy, then it goes to plan. Okay, then we go to ready, then we go to adopt, then it go to govern, then go to manage. Okay, so every enterprise follow this life cycle. So what is stage one? So stage one is always your strategy. Okay, so in a strategy, okay, so in a strategy, why the organizations move to Azure? So, for example, it's reduce the cost, improve the security, modernize the application, and global expansion and disaster recovery. So, architecture first, understanding business goal. Okay. And then second is plan. Okay. So, architecture identify the current data center applications, dependency, risks, and migrations priorities. For example, it has 500 server, then it goes to categorize, then it goes to migration waves. Okay. So, 5 right here. So it is start from 500 servers, then it goes to categories, then it goes to migration, migration waves. Okay. Now, what is stage 3? So stage 3 is ready. So now attack prepared the Azure. Okay, not applications, Azure itself. This include the identity, networking, governance, landing zones, and policies. And what is stage 4? So stage 4 will be adopt. Okay, so in this application being moving, like with the method include rehost, refactor, re-architecture, and replace. Okay, so migration begins only after the platform is ready. And what is stage 5, which is govern? So in govern, the organization implement the policy, compliance, cost management, security standards. Okay, and stage 6, which is managed the its continuous operation like monitoring, backup, DR, optimizations, and incident response. So what is a Azure landing zones? Okay, now the other topic come, what is Azure landing zones? So if you see the definition, so an Azure landing zone is the output of the multiple subscriptions Azure environment that accounts for the scale, security, governance, networking, identity. Okay, and it is not just a single subscriptions. Enterprise scales landing zones act as a foundations of your entire cloud portfolio, but it ensures that As you add hundreds of the applications, the platform remains secure and compliant through the policy-driven governance, which is under the Azure policy. Okay, so if I simplify this, what is landing zones? So let me write here for you. Azure landing zone. So its definition is one of the most important concept for Azure architect, okay, which is a pre-configured Azure environment ready for workload. Okay, so think like that. There is empty a house, okay, and it goes to electricity. Okay, I'm sorry for the spelling mistake because I'm writing very fast. Then it need water, okay, then it need security, obviously, okay, then it goes for internet because today's world in today's world we can't live without internet. Then it goes to ready to live, okay. So applications move into the houses, okay. So now what landing zone actually includes? So landing zones in, includes what? First is identity, okay, then networking, then security, then governance, then then monitoring, then policies, then management, management groups, then connectivity, obviously, then log. Okay, so every required before the workload arrives. And what are the common mistakes? Okay, so common mistakes are many beginners think like landing zone is equal to virtual network. That is incorrect. Landing zone is the entire Azure platform foundations. Okay, so enterprise landing zone architectures typically look like for Azure will be. What we write here? So enterprise landing zone architecture look like start from manage Ment group, then it goes to where? Identity, then it goes to connectivity, then it goes to again management, then it goes to landing zone, then it goes to finally applications. Okay, so you will notice application came late or came in last. Okay, and perform first. Okay, so Azure architecture never began with the virtual machine. Instead, they begin with the platform, governance, security, identity, networking applications. So why landing zone matters? So without landing zone, random subscriptions, random policies, random networking, and random security. For that results, it's become chaos. Okay, and with landing zone, standard Azure platform, everything follow the enterprise standard. Okay, so enterprise scale architectures, Microsoft call this enterprise scale landing zones, which is designed for to organize with the hundreds of subscriptions, thousands of the workload, multiple business units, and global projects. Now, what is the enterprise architecture layer? So enterprise architecture look like, we write here, enterprise architectures layers. So it's look like start from what? Start from tenant. Then it goes to management, management groups. Then it goes to platform. Then it goes to landing zones. Then it goes to finally applications. Okay. So what is the platform versus workload? So very common asked in interview questions. So platform team manage the identity, networking, governance, policies, monitoring, and applications team manage the applications, database, APIs, and containers. And what is the platform engineering? So modern Azure organizations create a cloud platform team, which is responsible for like build the landing zones, manage the governance, build the networking, create the standards, and developer consume the platform. Now, enterprise analogy, like think of an airport. Okay, so platform team build like runway, security, power, and control tower. Okay, so in that case, airlines simply operate the flights so that in same landing zone works. Okay, in very much same way. So what are the benefit of the landing zone? So it is standardized, security, scalability, compliance, faster deployment, and operational excellence. Now, CFA and Azure Well Architectures framework, and what are the which is common confusion. So basically, CAF answer: how do we adopt Azure? Okay, and Azure Well Architecture framework answer: how do we build a good Azure workload? So together they complement each other. So what will be the enterprise scenario for company? So let's suppose there is 15 countries, 15 business units, and 250 Azure subscriptions and 3000 engineers. So would you manually configure every subscriptions? Answer will be no. Okay. So in that case, architecture recommendations, which is include the cloud operation framework, enterprise landing zones, management group, and Azure policy and a standardized platform. And what are the security considerations? There is also the governance consideration, scalability consideration, and cost optimization consideration. Now, what is the common mistake? So, creating the subscriptions without planning, no governance, no management hierarchy, treating the landing users just as a networking, migrating the workload before building the platform, And what are the best practices? So practices will be: follow the cloud adaptations framework, build landing zone first, separate platform and application responsibilities, standardize the governance early, automate platform development using the infrastructures as a code, design for future growth, not just today requirements. Okay. Now, what are the interview perspectives if we say AZ-305 interview perspective? So, although the CFA and landing zones are not deeply tested as a standalone exam objective, they are frequently discussed in the solution architect interviews and enterprise design workload. So, there will be like n number of the interview scenarios. So let's suppose scenario one: a company is migrating thousands of the server to the Azure. Where should they start? So answer will be: it start from the cloud or adoption framework, then goes to ready phase, then goes to landing zones. If the scenario will be developer are creating the inconsistent Azure environment across the subscriptions, so answer will be enterprise landing zones with this centralized governance. And if the scenario will be who will or who should manage the networking identity and governance, so answer will be always central platform engineering team. Okay. So yeah, so this is the so today one of the biggest mistake organizations make is migrating the workload before building the Azure platform. Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework teach us to prepare the cloud environment first through the landing zones, governance, okay, networking, identity, and security. Okay. And landing zones are not just a network, they are complete enterprise ready Azure foundation that allow the application team to deploy the workload consistently and securely. So, as a cloud solution architect or Azure cloud solution architect, we need to design the platform that enable the hundreds of the development team to involve without sacrificing the governance, security, and operational excellence. So now we will look the another topic. And in our first topic, we establish the foundations. What are the cloud adoption framework? What is Azure landing zone? Why should they perform be prepared before the workload migrations? Okay. And what is enterprise scale architecture and platform team versus application systems? Now we are going to one level deeper. Imagine the organization has right here. Imagine the organization have one Azure tenant. Okay. Then it goes to 300 subscription, then it goes to 5 or let's suppose 50,000 plus Azure resources. Okay. So the question become, how do we organize all this without creating an administrative nightmare? So answer will be simple. So the answer start with the well designed management group hierarchy platform architectures. Okay. So first, enterprise landing zone, which is in the big pictures. A mature enterprise Azure environment typically separate the platform service from application workload. Okay, conceptually, let me show you what I am mm, trying to see. Let me share picture of it. So, okay, in time I am finding the picture. Let me Okay, so basically it is a difference between the enterprise landing zone and platform landing zone, identity subscriptions, connectivity subscriptions, okay, management subscriptions, security subscriptions, and why the separate platform subscriptions, okay, and then management group hierarchy, and also why management group matter, and then policy inheritance and RBAC inheritance, and landing zone workload categories, okay, and crop versus online. So let me share you. Okay, the first will be enterprise landing zone. The big picture will be the mature enterprise. Azure env- environment typically separates, as I said, perform services from the application workload, and its pictures look like something like this. Okay, it has a tenant, Azure tenant, management group, platform. Then platform has a three category: identity management, connectivity, security, and landing zone has any workload like company workload, okay, online workload, and other workload. Okay, so this separation is extremely important. Okay, and so if we see now, the second will be the platform landing zone. So platform landing zone contains shared services that support the entire organization, okay, which is your identity, connectivity, and security management. Okay, and these aren't individual business applications; they are foundational service. Okay, so what's in the identity subscriptions? So enterprise may dedicate the subscription to the identity related platform services. Okay, so for example, domain controller, identity services, and shared authentications component. However, don't assume that every enterprise must separate a subscriptions for every identity component. Okay, so the architecture should follow the actual requirement, and the important principle is centralized shared platform capabilities where the appropriate. Okay, now there is connectivity subscriptions. Okay, so in connectivity subscriptions, this is one of the most important platform subscriptions, which contain the hub, VNet, Azure firewall, VPN gateway, express route gateway, and DNS service and network management component. Okay, so this creates the centralized network connectivity. And in management subscriptions can host the centralized management services such as log analytics, Azure monitor, automations, update management, and management agents. The goal is centralize the operational visibility. And what come under the security subscriptions? So a larger organizations may also separate a security related platform capabilities. Okay. For example, security monitoring, security management, centralized security services. And the most defend, defender of the cloud can provide the security posture management across the environment. So why separate platform subscriptions? So imagine putting everything into one subscriptions. Okay. Let me write here like networking, networking, identity, identity, then security, then applications, then development, then production. Okay. So it becomes difficult to delegate the ownership, apply the policies, control the access management billing, and separate the responsibility. So instead of that, what we do, we do in platform subscription yeah, perform subscriptions. It has what? Identity. Identity. Okay. Then connectivity. Then management. Then security. And workload subscription will be what? It has finance. It has HR. It has retail. It has retail. And fourth one is insurance. Okay. So these are the these are come under the workload system. So this create a clear boundaries. Okay. And what's under the management group hierarchy? So now let's begin the governance hierarchy. A common conceptual architectures look like tenant root group, which has, let me write here, tenant root group has what? Platform. Okay. And platform has connectivity. No, let me write here. It has platform. Platform has what? It has connectivity. Okay. Connectivity and identity and management. And then landing zone, which has a any core or business. Then it has online. And third will be your sandbox. And fourth will be your decommission. Okay. So the exact structure should be adapted to the nation requirement. Okay. And why the management group matters? So suppose you have 100 the production subscriptions. So we need all the production subscription must be approved Azure region. Without management group, subscriptions 1 go to policy, subscription 2 go to policy, subscription 3 go to policy. That's difficult to manage. Okay. And with management group, production management group, we put the policy on that, and now you have your all 100 systems get approved with the policy. So governance becomes centralized. And what are the policy inheritance? So Azure policy assignment at a parent management group can affect the child subscriptions. Like it start with the management group, then we apply the Azure policy, and it has a subscriptions A, subscriptions B, subscriptions C. So this allow the enterprise wide governance. Okay, and what will the RBAC in inheritance? So in RBAC inheritance, RBAC can also be assigned at the broader scope. For example, management group goes to security system, then subscription. So this can reduce the repetitive access configurations. However, the broad RBAC assignment must be used carefully, which always follow the least privilege. Okay. And what are the landing zone workload category? So a common enterprise distinctions is a business or co- corporate for workload requiring the private network connectivity, for example, internal banking applications, internal ERP, corporate HR system. Okay. And what is online? So for workload designed for the internet facing access for public website, okay, customer portal or public API. Okay. So these are the management. So what are the management group hierarchy? The enterprise scale the architecture prescribe a specific management group hierarchy to isolate the platform service from the applications workload, which includes the platform, which contains the systems of core networking, hub, identity, domain, and controller, and centralized management, which is log analytics. And landing zones, which already told you, like contain the actual applications workload, spokes often spread by the online, which is public, or COP or business, which is internal connectivity requirement, and sandbox, which is isolated environment for testing with loose policy. Okay. Now, what are the subscription strategy? Okay. So it is designed in four ways. Okay. The first way is scale limit. To create the separate subscription for the massive workload to avoid the hitting the Azure resource quit. Example, max number of the virtual CPU or the networking limits that could impact the other apps. Second, environment splits, which always physically separate productions from dev or test workload into different subscriptions. And this prevent the accident changes and allow the distance RBAC assignment. And what is the billing and chargeback? So use subscriptions aligned to business unit or a specified workload to natively separate invoice and enable the seamless internal financial chargeback. And fourth will be your regulatory needs, like isolate the application with the strict compliance requirements like PCI, DSS, or HIPAA into their own subscriptions to narrowing the apply intense Azure policy. Okay, so uh, yeah. So what is the golden rule? So always remember this: the centralized what should be centralized, decentralized what should be owned by application team. Let me write. So what is the golden rule? So golden rule is central centralize what should be standard standardize and decentralize what should be owned by application team. Okay. So now what are the common mistakes? So common mistakes are one giant subscriptions, too many unnecessary subscriptions, no management group hierarchy, application team managing the enterprise networking independently, hard coded credential, no centralized governance, manual LAN zone deployment, and no cost control. And what are the best practices? So best practices will start with the governance, establish the identity, build the connectivity, decentralize the shared services, create the centralized landing zone, automate the deployment, apply the policy consistently, delegate the workload ownership, monitor the entire environment, and design for the future scale. And some of the most uh, asked question really: what is Azure Landing Zone? Why are the management group important? How would you design Azure 500 subscriptions? What belong in a connectivity subscriptions? Why separate platform and landing zone subscriptions? What is the difference between the COP online landing zones? And how would you prevent every applications team from creating its own networking architecture? And how would you prevent every applications from creating its own network architecture? And how would you automate the landing zone deployments? Okay, so now see, when an organizations move to Azure at enterprise scale, the biggest challenging isn't creating a resource. The biggest challenging is creating a platform that hundreds of the team can safely consume. So that's why the Microsoft promote the landing zone approach, and we establish identity, connectivity, governance, security, monitoring, and management capability before workload are deployed. And management group provide the organizational hierarchy, platform landing zones provide the shared capabilities, and workload landing zones provide a standardized environment for the applications teams. So the architecture responsibility is find the right balance, decentralize the control that must be consistent while allowing the application team enough autonomy, the autonomy innovate. Okay. Now so we complete the our today's session. So at the end, I will tell you at enterprise scale, deployment Azure resources only the beginning. The real challenges is operating the platform consistently across the hundreds of the subscriptions and thousands of the workload. Okay, and that's why the monitoring and cost management, governance, automation, and platform engines are integrated part of the landing zones. And a mature platforms gives developers self-service capabilities, but it's also establish the guardrails around the security, cost, compliance, and operations. And the ultimate goal isn't to create a platform that restrict the engineering teams. The goal is to create the platform where the secure, compliant, observability, and cost where path is also the easiest path. Okay, so yeah, we will see you next session. Till then, keep learning and keep exploring. Okay.